Tonight on PrimeTime, fresh strikes and missile attacks as the death toll in Iran climbs past 1,000 and fighting spreads beyond the original front lines. The escalation is now reaching beyond the Middle East, with Azerbaijan reporting that Iranian drones struck the terminal building of Nakhchivan International Airport, damaging infrastructure and injuring civilians. A widening conflict with no clear boundaries. Good evening, and we start with an exclusive interview. Earlier, our colleague Orkan Amashov spoke with Kazem Garibabadi, Iran's Deputy Foreign Minister for Legal and International Affairs. They spoke about the latest developments and Tehran's view of the escalating conflict. Here's part of that conversation.
Deputy Foreign Minister, so grateful to you for your time.
Hello, thank you very much.
Deputy Foreign Minister, we just received literally a few minutes ago the information suggesting that Nakhchivan Airport of Azerbaijan was targeted in an Iranian attack. This development reached us just before we went on air. And what is the reality there? What is your information regarding what happened in Nakhchivan region of Azerbaijan?
Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. We are not targeting our neighboring countries, you know. For this incident, I have heard about it from you. I should investigate it, what the source of information and the nature of the information is, and I can comment later on.
Thank you very much, Deputy Foreign Minister.
By the way, this is not the policy of the Islamic Republic of Iran, actually to attack or to target the neighboring countries, unless the military bases of our adversaries, namely the Zionist regimes and the United States of America, are active there and are used to attack the innocent people in the Islamic Republic of Iran, because we have announced it from the beginning that if there is any military bases in the region and they are used to attack Iran and the forces of the Americans are there, we will target them. So that was the policy that we have announced.
Thank you very much indeed, Deputy Foreign Minister, for explaining Iran's official policy regarding this matter. The footage that we have received, naturally we expect official confirmation from the Iranian side, from the Azerbaijani side, shows that the Nakhchivan airport was targeted. It looks like a drone attack. It could be collateral damage emanating from debris falling on the airport, but we don't know yet. But basically you said that Islamic Republic of Iran would never attack a neighborly friendly country unless there is a military base of any foreign country. Am I right to understand that as long as Azerbaijani sovereign territory is concerned, there is no legitimate military target as far as Islamic Republic of Iran is concerned?
What we're expecting from our neighboring countries actually is first not to allow our adversaries to conduct operations in the Islamic Republic of Iran using their own territories, ground territory or the space or the sea territories, you know, it doesn't matter. This is the first section. And the third is to provide safety and security in the borders, not to allow the terrorists or the adversaries to pass their own borders. So this will apply also to Azerbaijan. We have always been in close contact with the officials in the region and also with our friends in Azerbaijan. We have raised and shared with them our expectations and also our concerns in this regard. So this is not only regarding Azerbaijan. We really appreciate also the position and the sympathy that has been shown by the President of Azerbaijan regarding the aggression and also regarding the assassination and martyrdom of our supreme leader. So we expect actually this friendly relationship to be continued in this regard. At the end, we are neighbors and we have to live in the same region and to have coexistence in this regard.
Deputy Foreign Minister, are you happy and satisfied? I mean, your government is happy, satisfied with Azerbaijani position regarding this unfolding conflict between Iran on one side and Israel and United States on the other. Azerbaijani Foreign Ministry, Azerbaijani Presidential Administration made very clear that Azerbaijani territory will never be used against any third country, including Islamic Republic of Iran. And in the context of this reported attack on Nakhchivan airport, the question is, what is the bilateral contact between Azerbaijan and Iran regarding this very matter? What is your evaluation of Azerbaijan's position regarding this matter? You said that you have some expectations, and we heard you, of course, but do you believe your expectations are met properly?
We are monitoring the situation in this regard. First of all, the position that has been expressed by the Azerbaijani officials are really in the context of the friendly neighboring countries. You know, that was a very constructive position that has been expressed by the Azerbaijani officials in this regard, and we will respect that, and we will value such a position of Azerbaijani officials in this regard. This is what we expect, and actually this is also very, very important. This is the first issue, and the second issue is still we have not actually received any information that Iran targets some places in Azerbaijan. This is the first time that I'm hearing you, and absolutely the relevant officials and the institutions, they will make a comment on that, whether that is true or not. You know, the second issue, and the third issue is that we will also value the position that has been expressed by the Azerbaijani officials, that they will not allow any aggression or the abuse of the territory of Azerbaijan to be abused against the Islamic Republic. And this is of high value for us, and we will expect actually this position to be continued. And we expect also our Azerbaijani friends to show vigilance in this regard, to monitor every movement there.
Thank you, Minister. I fully understand that we have yet to receive official confirmation. The footage that we received does give rise to a certain picture, but of course we need confirmation. But if allow me to ask one more question about it, because it's so important. For the first time, Azerbaijan's sovereign territory seems to have been targeted by foreign power. I need to ask this question. According to your evaluation as Deputy Foreign Minister of the Islamic Republic of Iran, is there any, as far as things stand now, as long as your information is concerned, as long as your knowledge, within the confines of knowledge, is there any military target for the Islamic Republic of Iran as things stand now?
Azerbaijan, you mean?
Yes, within the scope of Azerbaijan's sovereign territory. Is there any place which could be deemed as military target from the perspective of Islamic Republic of Iran in the light of the unfolding situation?
We do not see Azerbaijan as an adversary. Azerbaijan is a neighboring country for the Islamic Republic of Iran, you know, and this is what I can say in this regard. And the Azerbaijani officials, they know their own responsibility in this very complicating and situation and the crisis that we are witnessing. This is what we expect from the neighboring countries. I believe that Azerbaijan is too different than the other countries in the Persian Gulf region, you know, while the military base of our adversaries, specifically the United States, are active to conduct operations against the Islamic Republic of Iran. But so far, this has not been the case for Azerbaijan, and I hope that this will be continued in this regard, you know. Very, very important. This is what I can say. And again, I raise expectation that the providing security in the borders also are very, very important, and this is what we expect from all neighboring countries in this regard.
Thank you very much, Deputy Foreign Minister. I'm so grateful to you. Regarding the general situation in Iran, what is the situation on the ground, and what are the Iranian conditions for de-escalation?
What we are witnessing now is that the United States and the Israeli regimes are killing the innocent civilians and the innocent people. They are targeting everywhere, unfortunately. They are violating international law, Charter of the United Nations, and also the rules of humanitarian international law. They are targeting military sites. They are targeting law enforcement sites. They are targeting infrastructures. They are targeting their civil service infrastructures. They are targeting residential areas. They are targeting hospitals. They are targeting the training centers. Just a few days ago, they have actually targeted elementary school in one of the cities of Iran named Minab. They have killed 168 innocent school girls, innocent. Their age was between 7 to 10, 10 years old. Those innocent girls have been killed by these atrocious regimes. So this is a war against Iranian people. This is a war against the civilians. This is the war against innocent people. So those are the regimes, specifically the United States, that they were advocating democracy and human rights for the people throughout the world. This is the kind of the human rights and also democracy that they are going to grant to the people throughout the world. So all these atrocities and the crimes that are committed by them in the Islamic Republic of Iran are against innocent people. This is the first issue. The second issue is that Iranian people, they have shown that they are very firm and decisive to defend their own country. We never attacked any country. We never has been a threat to the United States of America. Even we have never attacked the Israeli regime, But by the way, Iranians have shown that they are very firm and decisive.
Deputy Foreign Minister, I'm terribly sorry, bearing the time limitation, allow me to put you the following. I'm terribly sorry. Allow me to put the following. Do you think Islamic Republic of Iran itself acting in line with international humanitarian law? Because we saw some images coming from Gulf countries. Your government have been targeting U.S. assets in the Gulf region, but also some collateral damage extended to civilian infrastructure as well. And the latest developments regarding Nakhchivan also gives rise to a number of questions. Do you think Iran itself is acting in line with international humanitarian law? And how do you see Iran's retaliatory space? What are those targets that Iran should aim at as part of this conflict, you think?
Yes, well, this is not a war against our own country. It's very clear to them. The second issue is that we never attack civilians and also the infrastructure of the neighboring countries. We have never attacked targets belonging to our neighboring countries. This is and we have made it very clear. But by the way, we are at time, as I have said, our people are adversaries. We cannot stay either. So those are our enemies, wherever they are. If they are reached by our armed forces, with them. So this is a war. You cannot, and to see your people are killed. You're innocent civilian and people are killed by the adversaries. So their bases are there. Those bases and those lists of our adversaries, namely the United States of America, are used to attack Iran. So what should we do? What should we do?
We're talking about the extension of the damage to civilian population, the Deputy Foreign Minister.
No, we are never targeting. We are never targeting the civilians. We have never targeted actually any location belonging to the neighboring countries. Whatever targeted, in accordance with the statements of our armed forces, are only targets belonging to our adversaries.
And how do you explain the images coming from Dubai, from United Arab Emirates? There have been some civilian infrastructure damage there as well. Was that collateral damage? Was that not intention of the Islamic Republic of Iran? How would you explain those images that are circulating in the media sphere?
As I have said, if there is any target that has been taken by the Islamic Republic of Iran belonging to the interests and also interests of the America in the neighboring countries, we are never targeting the location targets belonging to the neighboring countries in this, because this is not a war against our neighboring countries. This is what we have said, and this is what we are saying, and we are emphasizing on it.
Thank you, Deputy Foreign Minister.
And possibly you have been informed that just recently, Tucker Carlson, the journalist from the United States, said that the Qataris and also arrested some Israelis, that they are bombings in several locations in Qatar and also in some other countries, using false flags to conduct operations by the Israelis should not be forgotten in such cases.
Thank you, Deputy Foreign Minister. I've just been informed by my colleagues that Iran's ambassador to Azerbaijan has been summoned to Azerbaijani Foreign Ministry in order to provide explanation. Your colleague, fellow diplomat, has been summoned to Azerbaijani Foreign Ministry. Let's see what happens. We're just receiving information. Naturally, the full picture is not there yet. Regarding NATO air defense systems intercepting missiles in Turkish airspace linked to Iranian operations, what is your evaluation of that? Was that by mistake or was that intentional? Because as I understand, Turkey is one of the friendly countries as long as Iran is concerned, and naturally Turkey is not your military target. What is your evaluation of what happened regarding that matter?
No, we never targeted Turkey in this regard. So the statement also was issued that Iran never targeted Turkey.
But why
because we are
entered
Turkish friendly and neighboring country in this regard.
But why there was a need to intercept those missiles when they entered the Turkish airspace if Turkey was not? What was the original target then? It was Iraq?
That was what actually said by NATO. You know, so this is their statement in this regard. You should wait and see the statement of the armed forces of the Islamic Republic of Iran also. But what we can say and what was said by our officials several hours ago is that Iran never targeted Turkey.
Yeah, but do you confirm the fact that there was a need to intercept those missiles when they entered, or you deny that part of the story as well?
Interception of Iranian missiles, you mean?
Yes, in the Turkish airspace.
No, I have said the position, you know. I have said that Iran never targeted.
You said they never targeted, but do you accept that despite the fact that Iran has not targeted Turkey or any target inside Turkey, that indeed there was a case of NATO air defense system to intercept missiles. So there was actually intervention into Turkish airspace.
This is what NATO said. This is what NATO said. You should wait and see the reaction of the armed forces of Iran also. This is what they say. This is not what we say.
Okay. Well, I understood. You refused to accept that version coming from Turkey and NATO. One more question, Deputy Foreign Minister, if I may. It's a situation is developing. As I speak to you, I also receive different pieces of information regarding Iran-Azerbaijan dynamics. It's an incredibly concerning moment for these two countries, in particular bearing in mind that over the past few months there have been indications that relations could be developed in a very constructive fashion. What is your evaluation situation regarding the Strait of Hormuz and the closure and the impact on the supply chains? What Iran is planning to do regarding that particular aspect?
Iran has always tried to provide security and also free navigation in the Strait of Hormuz. That was our policy, you know. But now the situation is very different. Now we are at war. So at war, we have that there is going to be war against the Islamic Republic of Iran. Iran's regulations would prevail over the navigation in the Strait of Hormuz. So what you see nowadays is the application of the regulation during the war times. This is not what we wanted. This is what our adversaries actually brought to the region. These are the consequences of war. So they should be blamed actually in this regard. We cannot allow the passage of the ships, commercial or the military of our adversaries to pass the Strait of Hormuz.
Thank you.
This is very natural.
Thank you. Thank you, Deputy Foreign Minister. I'm very grateful for your time. And regarding what happened at Nakhchivan Airport, we have yet to receive information. Latest report suggests that your ambassador to this country has been summoned to the Foreign Ministry, and let's see what happens. And hopefully nothing in the spirit of escalation, but de-escalation and clarification. Thank you very much indeed for your time. Thank you.
Sure. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Orkan Amishov there with that exclusive A News interview. US lawmakers have backed the ongoing military campaign in the Middle East as fighting between Washington and Israel and Iran intensifies. Over the past few hours, attacks have continued across several countries, with the reported death toll in Iran now surpassing 1,000.
On Wednesday, U.S. Senate Republicans backed President Donald Trump's military campaign against Iran, voting 53-47 to block a bipartisan resolution that would have required congressional approval for hostilities.
45 of the last 47 presidents, which is all we've had, have ordered kinetic acts just like President Trump has done, without going to Congress. This isn't new. This has happened 45 in the last 47 presidencies.
The measure, aimed at reasserting Congress's constitutional war powers, was largely opposed along party lines. A similar resolution is being debated in the House, with a vote expected on Thursday. Meanwhile, the conflict in the region continues to escalate. The Pentagon says a U.S. submarine sank an Iranian warship near Sri Lanka, with over 24 crew members rescued. Human rights monitors report more than 1,000 people have been killed in Iran since U.S. and Israeli strikes began over the weekend. Sunday's drone attack on a U.S. facility in Kuwait killed 2 more American reservists, raising the total to 6. Israel has carried out new strikes in Iran and targeted Hezbollah positions in Lebanon, leaving several dead and thousands displaced. Iran has launched retaliatory strikes at Israel, while the UAE and Qatar report intercepting projectiles. In northern Iraq, a drone was shot down near Erbil Airport, crashing into a residential building and causing damage but no injuries.
Well, joining us now is our very own Anastasia Lavrina. Anastasia, very good to see you. What a day, although I've said what a day for every day, I think this conflict has played out. Really remarkable, concerning stuff. Let's look at Washington to begin with. Congress, what's going on there? Have they handed the president a carte blanche then to kind of do what he likes in this campaign?
Thank you so much, Guy, for this question. Indeed, every day, every single day, we can find news about the escalation in between of Iran, Israel, United States, and far beyond, including the countries like United Kingdom, which is already trying to increase the presence in the Middle East in case of any necessity to be used. The regional actors, I guess later on we can also discuss the situation which happened today in Azerbaijan, in Nakhchivan for sure. But for the beginning, as you rightly mentioned, the failure of the bipartisan resolution in the United States Senate. There were a lot of talks in the United States on which party and which, let's say, policymakers are in favor of the military operations led by American leader Donald Trump and who against. And I guess this division was visible with the result of the vote, the 53 against 47, meaning that Donald Trump can continue military operation without immediate congressional restrictions. The vote also signaled that for now there is official political support in Washington to what is happening in between of Washington and Tehran. And again, several Republican senators indicated that even if now they are supporting the action and the decisions made by the President Donald Trump, in the future, in case of any further escalation, let's say appearance of new actors on the military scale and the necessity in the large-scale ground operations, then they will definitely reconsider their attitude to the situation. But as for now, there is a clear division. Politically, Democrats argue that the administration has not provided a consistent strategic justification for the strikes. And on the opposite side, Republicans largely view the strikes as a necessary response to Iranian threats and regional instability. So as for today, there is a clear division, political division in the United States, but Donald Trump will definitely continue to lead the military operation in Iran, against Iran, where it's being considered as a threat for America and for other countries in the region, in accordance with the official position of Washington. And as we could hear from the official statements of Pentagon, they do consider the operation not to be endless. And they will need some more time. From the official statement, we can understand that they are sure day by day Iran is losing its power, its a number of missiles and etc. And probably within the next days, they are expecting the capitulation. But from the official sources, again, we have to follow them to understand what exactly is happening on the ground.
Yeah, indeed. The other thing that's happening, though, day by day, is the ripple effect. This war is reaching wider and wider, isn't it? It's going now far beyond the Middle East. Do you think there is an acceptance, a tolerance for that in Washington?
I wouldn't say that there is a tolerance, but U.S. approach seems to be focused now on a limited and targeted strikes. rather than a large-scale military campaign. They're still sure that they can combat the efforts and to conclude the military operation in the upcoming days. Also, U.S. officials have indicated that the objective is to weaken Iran's capabilities and deter the further escalation. But what we observed yesterday when this actually, what's happened with Turkey, the day before, as I mentioned, Iranian ballistic missile entered Turkish airspace and was intercepted by NATO air defense. Unfortunately, officially Iran denied this fact, as we could see today also what happened in Azerbaijan in Nakhchivan when the drone attacks were carried against the Nakhchivan Autonomous Republic, and among the targeted there was a school and the airport. We could hear this statement, a clear statement of the head of the state of the Republic of Azerbaijan, His Excellency Ilham Aliyev. I would say it was very precise, it was very, it covered all the aspects. And the first, what we were expected, Iran to accept that it was a decision made in Tehran, the explanation to be followed, and also the expressment of an apology, the clear investigation, and the readiness to punish the responsible. And I guess the same was the expectations of Turkey when it's happened yesterday.
Extraordinary, isn't it? Extraordinary performance. And we saw it in the Orkan Amishov interview there, just sort of flitting between complete denial, you know, suggesting we have no knowledge at all, and then we hear, no, now we're going to investigate ourselves. Very, very strange response.
It's indeed very strange, especially in a country, to hear it from the country which is involved in the large-scale military operations. This war lasts just 5 or 6 days, but already targeted so many countries, meaning that the military actors, the policymakers are deeply involved in all decision-making process. They're following to the military operations, to the strategy of the drones and missiles, to where it's being sent. But indeed, I was so much surprised to watch this interview and to listen the official position of one of the policymakers in Iran when he was saying that I have no idea what's happened. And well, we can understand that probably he was misinformed, disinformed, or probably indeed he didn't know what's happened. But already how many hours passed? Where is the official statement, the apology, and the readiness to investigate? In Iran, they are stating that they never attack the neighboring country, especially where there is no military base. And Azerbaijani position was clear, even during the period when there was an escalation and some, let's say, difficulties in between of Azerbaijan and Iran in the past. Azerbaijan never allowed to use its airspace to other countries against Iran or any other third countries. And even today, President Ilham Aliyev once again stated that we will not allow our airspace to be used against someone again. And having all of these, as they are saying, Muslim countries, the tolerance, the cooperation within the international organizations, and etc., there was no any official, let's say, recognition of what had been done toward the country like Azerbaijan. That's why we can clearly understand the position of the head of the state when there was so much dissatisfaction by the Iranian position, by the by the way, even some sources try to position it as if the drone attack was launched by Israeli forces. But technically, it's almost impossible to imagine how it will happen. And to just mention someone with whom you are in a war, when it comes to the so-called brotherly country, which you have the close border together. And Azerbaijan indeed helped Iran in many cases, even the humanitarian corridor, when the people are being evacuated through the border of Azerbaijan with Iran, the security measures, not allowance of any illegal border cross to be done within this cross border. So we still have a lot of expectations from Iranian government, but until now their position, their behavior, it's indeed have nothing to explain and to understand.
Yeah, one of the things the Deputy Foreign Minister seemed to emphasize in the interview with Orkan was his own expectations, which is very strange again if you're coming on to talk about a situation as one that happened today.
Sorry for interrupting. There was one moment indeed I liked it in Orhan's statement as well, when the Iranian side started to blaming others for the casualties, for the attacking to the civilians. Yes, we do understand these casualties and the deaths of the innocent people, but what Iran is doing when they are attacking a number of countries, it's not only the infrastructure, the military bases, as they are saying, the United States assets. There are a number of, let's say, subjects which have nothing to do with the military response.
Yes.
And today's attack at school in Nakhchivan Autonomous Republic, what kind of military object do they consider there, do they view there? Or
Yes.
the airport, what kind of military subjects they do find there? Nothing. So blaming others for some mistakes or for any kind of inappropriate action against Iran, there should be clear understanding that the good neighborhood and the priceless of what a neighbor country is doing to, let's say, facilitate the process, especially from the humanitarian point of view, should be appreciated and prized firsthand.
Yeah, it was indeed the most unserious response to the most serious of situations. Quite extraordinary. Let's just finally take a look at what happens now, Anastasia. Do you have any expectation that the situation between Iran and Azerbaijan will escalate?
I guess it's already escalated, especially after the official statements. It could be de-escalated if in Iran there will be a clear understanding of what they did, and the excuse has to happen some hours before. There should be an investigation, as the head of the state stated, also as express of an apology and the clear investigation towards the punishment of those who are responsible. If it would happen in the beginning, then probably we could expect some de-escalation. But now the situation is indeed very, very difficult, and there is misunderstanding probably in the Iran itself on what Azerbaijan means for Tehran. Probably geographically we are smaller, but from the position of the military stress, from the position of the important geographical locations, number of partnering countries, the military capabilities, we are able to respond. Starting from the mobilizations of the troops who are ready to act in case of any emergency, until the time when we are ready that our position is respected, our sovereignty and territorial integrity is also respected by our neighboring countries, and there is a clear understanding of the possible implications of such an inappropriate behavior by Tehran in case of any changes happens in the, let's say, in the coming hours or even days.
Anastasia, it really is a most remarkable situation. We thank you very much indeed.
Thank you for having
coming
me
on, as always. Okay, Iran has carried out a drone strike on Azerbaijan's Nakhchivan International Airport, damaging the terminal building. Azerbaijan strongly condemns the strikes, describing them as a violation of international law and its territorial integrity. Iran's ambassador in Baku has been summoned to the foreign ministry. Now, according to Azerbaijan's foreign ministry, 2 drones launched from Iranian territory entered Nakhchivan on Thursday. 1 drone struck the terminal of Nakhchivan International Airport, while the second exploded near a secondary school in the village of Shak Arabat. The attack damaged the airport facility and injured 4 civilians. Well, according to Nakhchivan Ministry of Health, all were given first aid treatment and their condition is reported as stable.
4 people were admitted following the incident and their condition is stable. Initial examinations have been completed and they have been placed in the relevant departments. 2 patients suffered barotrauma while 2 others sustained blunt trauma to the back. Further tests and treatment are ongoing and they are expected to return home once their condition improves.
And these Iranian strikes on Azerbaijan's Nakhchivan Autonomous Republic have caused an international uproar against the Iranian actions.
An international response has been triggered following Iranian drone strikes in Azerbaijan's Nakhchivan Autonomous Republic. Following a phone call between Turkey's President Recep Tayyip Erdogan and Azerbaijan's President Ilham Aliyev, Erdogan strongly condemned the strike and conveyed his condolences. The two leaders also discussed the latest developments related to the attack and broader regional security concerns. Qatar condemned Iran's actions, saying they represent a dangerous escalation and a flagrant violation of state sovereignty. In a statement, the country's foreign ministry urged Iran to immediately halt what it described as irresponsible policies that undermine regional stability. Saudi Arabia also criticised the strikes, with its foreign ministry describing Iran's actions as cowardly attempts that reveal a hostile approach that cannot be justified. It added that Iran's behaviour violated international law. In a statement on social media, Ukraine's Foreign Minister Andriy Sybiha called Iran's strikes on Azerbaijan reckless and added that there was never any reason for Iran to harm Azerbaijan. The United Kingdom's ambassador to Azerbaijan, Fergus Auld, also took to social media, saying that Britain stands in full solidarity with Azerbaijan and adding that Iran's actions threaten the country's security. Following a phone call between Uzbekistan's Foreign Minister Bakhtiyor Saidov and Azerbaijani counterpart Ceyhun Bayramov, Saidov expressed concern over the drone strike and called Iran's actions unacceptable, saying they contradict the principles of international law. Georgia's Ministry of Foreign Affairs released a statement also saying the attack grossly violates the principles and norms of international law. It further expressed solidarity with Azerbaijan, highlighting the strong friendship and partnership between the two countries. Meanwhile, Iran has denied launching strikes on the Republic of Azerbaijan. In a statement, the country's military said it respects the sovereignty of all states and claimed the allegations were an attempt to disrupt relations between Muslim countries.
Meanwhile, Turkey has lodged a diplomatic protest with Iran after a ballistic missile was launched towards Turkish airspace on Wednesday. Now, the incident comes amid escalating tensions across the whole region and has prompted both diplomatic contacts and heightened security precautions in Ankara. Here are the details.
Turkey's foreign ministry summoned Iran's ambassador late Wednesday to protest the launch of a ballistic missile fired toward Turkish airspace. The missile was intercepted by NATO air defense systems over the eastern Mediterranean on Wednesday, according to Turkey's defense ministry. Turkish Foreign Minister Hakan Fidan also spoke by phone with his Iranian counterpart Abbas Araghchi to convey Ankara's concern over the incident. According to the Turkish Foreign Ministry, Fidan stressed that any step that might further escalate the already volatile regional conflict should be avoided. He also urged restraint and emphasized the importance of preventing any actions that could widen the crisis. According to a statement released by Iran's foreign ministry, Araghchi denied that Iranian forces had launched any missiles toward Turkey, telling Fidan that Tehran's missile strikes were retaliatory and defensive in nature. He said Iranian strikes were directed exclusively at U.S. and Israeli facilities being used in operations against Iran. In a separate statement on Thursday, the Iranian military also denied firing any missiles toward Turkish territory and reaffirmed Tehran's respect for Turkey's sovereignty. Meanwhile, Turkish President Recep Tayyip Erdogan said Ankara was leaving nothing to chance regarding the security of its borders and airspace. He added that Turkey was taking all necessary precautions in close consultation with its NATO allies. In the immediate wake of the missile incident, Fidan also spoke by phone with U.S. Secretary of State Marco Rubio. According to officials, Rubio said that any attack on Turkey's sovereign territory was unacceptable and reaffirmed Washington's support. This is Adam Morrow for A News in Istanbul, Turkey.
Well, the widening Middle East conflict is now sending shockwaves into the South Caucasus and Turkey. Iranian drone strike damaged the terminal building at Nakhchivan International Airport, calling it a violation of its sovereignty, while Ankara has protested a ballistic missile that it says was launched towards Turkish airspace. Both incidents have triggered diplomatic protests and heightened security concerns across the region. Well, joining us now is Aytan Charnov, a geopolitical and security expert who is in Tel Aviv to discuss the implications with us. Aytan, thank you very much indeed for joining us. I mean, this is obviously extremely serious, what's happened in Azerbaijan's Nakhchivan. Because we haven't had an official explanation of why it's happened, we're left, I guess, to guess, to sort of figure it out for ourselves. What do you think could be the reason for it? Is it a warning not to get too close to America and Israel? Is it a telling off for some of the support for people crossing the border? What do you think the reason behind it was?
So I believe that Iran's strike today on Azerbaijan, of course, a non-belligerent in this conflict, is not exceptional in and of itself. Iran, starting on the first day of this war initiated solely by the United States and Israel, decided that they were not going to try to compete with Israel and the United States militarily. Despite the fact that the US has bases all over the region, an overwhelming majority of Iranian fire has been into other countries, often outside of their installations. And I also believe that Iran does not have full command and control systems in place since the very first morning of the war, when Israel and the United States conducted decapitation strikes against political, religious, and military leaders in the country. I think that the Iranian regime pre-programmed in their troops a doomsday scenario that if a lot of the leadership were to be killed and communication severed, for them to simply try to wreak havoc in the region as much as possible.
I mean, that's
to
fascinating.
Me, honestly, the most surprising strikes.
Sorry to cut across you, Aitan. Sorry to cut across, Aitan. Sorry to cut across you, but Aitan. Sorry, just one moment. Yeah. It's very interesting this question because are you suggesting then that there is no, in a sense, complete centralized control? That, in a sense, there are sort of military divisions, if you like, just sort of making up strategies for themselves?
Well, I'm not sure they're making it up, and there is some level of direction. Certainly, Iran has been able to establish some sort of control. However, I do believe that this is part of a pre-planned doomsday strategy. If the Iranian regime itself is threatened, they are to wreak as much havoc in the region as possible. Azerbaijan is a very natural target for them, a country that has complicated, yet of course still ties, but complicated ties with them. So if they're attacking Oman, who's probably the country that's closest to them in the region, of course they can attack Azerbaijan. I mean, they struck at Turkey, which is a NATO ally, right? That could lead to NATO intervention. This is a regime, I'm not trying to say the regime will fall, but this is a regime that's spiraling at the moment and is choosing to deploy pure terrorism against non-combatants, non-belligerent states at mass. That is actually the heart of their strategy. And we could see them striking out into more countries over the coming days as they become increasingly desperate. Their ultimate goal is to try to create enough global pressure on the US and Israel to stop. So far, that pressure is not taking place, and countries are standing firm, some even silently, waiting to see how this plays out. I think Iran has shown their true colors. They are truly a terrorist regime, and that is why they are carrying out acts of terror across the region.
And you mentioned the incident with the missile going into Turkish airspace, and quite rightly that obviously Turkey is a member of NATO. Do you think that with any more provocation of that nature, that possibly NATO could be drawn in to this conflict?
I think most of Europe, which comprises a majority of NATO, very much wants to stay out of this conflict and are very begrudgingly allocating some resources to protect Cyprus. I think a little more willingly allocating some resources to protect the GCC. There's some European fighter jets on the way. I think that a NATO joint defense is unlikely. However, Turkey reserves the right to play that card if they so choose. And I think the mere fact that they were attacked at all is an indication that I don't think that there's level heads calling the shots in Tehran right now.
Aitan, the response, the diplomatic response we've seen from Iran so far to Azerbaijan, and also the same could be said for Turkey. I described it earlier.
I can't hear you if you're still there.
Oh, we're having some technical issues with sound, I think. Ayten, are you still with us? Are you still able to hear me? Okay, that's really.
I can't hear anybody.
I'm so sorry. That's a real shame. We're having technical difficulties. We're going to have to therefore leave it there, unfortunately, unless we can just salvage that sound connection.
Can you hear me now?
I can hear you perfectly.
Amazing.
Okay, great. No, I was just asking, and apologies to viewers for that, the connection just going down very slightly. The situation with the diplomatic the response that we've seen to the Azerbaijan attack. Also, we saw a similar response with the Turkey missile situation. I described it earlier as an unserious response to a most serious situation. We had answers ranging from "I don't know" through to well, it wasn't us, and then, well, we need to investigate ourselves to find out. Seemingly giving these responses with impunity. What is this reflective of? Is this something that because it's very confusing as an outsider to look at this, to think that anybody could proffer that as a diplomatic response and all, at the same time demand to be taken seriously?
Well, I think that Iran is way past the threshold of being a diplomatic actor in the region, right? I'm not getting into whether the initiation of this war was justified by Israel or not, but once attacked, Iran chose not to counterattack, primarily targeting those who seek war against it, but has been ravaging across the region against non-belligerent actors. Diplomacy is no longer relevant in the Iranian arena now that, again, I think they've shown their true colors, and they've also shown the region what they're capable of.
And Ayten, just finally, I just wanted to get your sense on the US-Israeli strategy now. We keep hearing this could go on for weeks to come. At the same time, I think people are increasingly concerned that the ripple effects, the fallout is becoming increasingly, frankly, frightening for many, many people. What is your sense of how long the US and Israeli forces will continue this for? Could it be many, many weeks to come? Because I think there are many, many people out there that are hoping that it would be a lot, it would sort of come to its fruition an awful lot sooner.
So this is a complicated question in terms of how long this war can drag on. I'll start by saying that I think Prime Minister Netanyahu and President Trump are fully coordinated on the objectives and on the buildup to this war, and the execution shows a level of coordination almost unparalleled across global allies. The integration of air forces and resource management and intelligence sharing is quite remarkable. As a result, I believe that they're also synchronized on the messaging. And I think that they're very, very good deployers of intentional confusion. We saw that in the lead up to the 12-day war over the summer, where Trump and Netanyahu made it look like they were actually bickering with each other and displeased with each other and sending mixed messages about conflict. And I think that that's what they're doing here as well. I think that they want to confuse the Iranian government and create as much decision-making disarray and paralysis as possible. And that's primarily where these messages are directed. I think that the reality is only a very close circle of people in Washington and Tel Aviv have a sense of how long this war is to go on. But when you look at the scale of Iran's military capabilities and the diffusion of resources across the country, I think to really do the type of strategic damage that both the Prime Minister and President of Israel and the United States laid out in the first hours of this war, it will probably take them a couple of weeks to achieve that. Whether that's 1 to 2, 3 to 4 is a bit hard to say. But the war can also end faster if the Iranian regime were to surrender to their terms. So far, Iran's strategy of wreaking global havoc in order to draw a faster conclusion, I don't see signs that it's working for the time being. The Gulf countries are displaying incredible resilience. Their air defenses are working really, really above and beyond, exceptionally in the United Arab Emirates. Their interception ratio is probably the best in the world. And business and life is still going on. There's tremendous strength, tremendous resilience. I'm sure the same will be in Turkey, in Cyprus, and unfortunately in Azerbaijan as well. So as long as there's not tremendous global pressure, I don't think the United States or Israel feels like they're at a rush.
It's a very good point. It's a tricky message, though, isn't it, to the families who are comforting screaming children, who are terrified, sweating with stress, not knowing when this nightmare will end, to reassure them that, you know, it's all working really well. It's a beautifully coordinated campaign. Well done for being strong, and it's going to carry on for a few more weeks. You can appreciate how that's a difficult message for some people to take.
I believe war is always difficult, always complicated, and always painful. There might be political winners at the end of the day. Civilian populations don't win in war. That being said, the world is unfortunately used to conflict, and the Gulf in particular, you know, there was this misconception that the Gulf is fragile, right? You can see it a lot in Western media and on social media. And a lot of people were saying the same thing during COVID. COVID is going to kill the GCC. All the expats are going to leave. Property prices in Dubai doubled in the years after COVID. So here too, I'm not concerned about fragility, and I believe that the region's best days are still ahead of it.
Okay, Aytan, thank you very much indeed for joining us. We appreciate your analysis. Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Okay, after the break, we'll take a look at the top business news stories of the day with Katie Wilson. Stay tuned. A warm welcome back to Primetime, wherever you're watching. Now, Katie Wilson is here with the very latest business news stories. Katie, what's on your agenda tonight?
So obviously the US and Israel's war with Iran is still dominating the business news agenda, so we'll have more on that as well as some other stories, including a big launch from Apple. Let's get started. First this evening, let's continue our look into how South Korea's export-driven economy could be caught up in the fallout from the US-Israel war with Iran. Lawmakers in Seoul are warning the conflict could threaten supplies of crucial materials used to make semiconductors, a concern for a country that dominates the global memory chip market.
The US-Israel war with Iran could disrupt supplies of key semiconductor manufacturing materials. That was according to a South Korean lawmaker on Thursday. South Korea's chip industry supplies around 2/3 of global memory chips. Kim Young-bae said there is a concern that a prolonged conflict will lead to higher energy costs and prices, adding that he'd met with executives from companies such as Samsung Electronics and trade groups. He gave helium as one material that could face disruption. Helium is essential for heat management during semiconductor production. It's only produced in a handful of countries, with Qatar among the leading players in the industry. The warnings come as chip makers grapple with severe supply bottlenecks. That's due to surging chip demand from AI data center operations that's tightened supplies to many other industries, including smartphones, laptops and cars. South Korean chipmaker SK Hynix said in a statement it has a diverse supply chain for helium, and that there's, quote, almost no chance that the company will be affected. Samsung declined to comment. Taiwan's TSMC said in a statement that it did not anticipate any significant impact currently and will continue monitoring the situation closely.
Well, Russia's president has warned Moscow could halt gas supplies to Europe at any moment as prices surge amid the Iran crisis. Vladimir Putin linked the threats to EU plans to ban Russian gas after Europe moved to cut its dependence on Russian energy following the invasion of Ukraine.
Russian President Vladimir Putin said Wednesday that Moscow could halt gas supplies to Europe, quote, right now. The warning came amid a spike in energy prices triggered by the Iran crisis. Putin made the comments when asked about European plans to ban Russian gas imports.
Still, they have said that they plan to impose restrictions on purchasing the Russian gas, that they plan to do it in a month, with the 24th being the last day. And starting from 25th, they will impose restrictions on gas, including liquefied gas. And in 2027, they will impose further restrictions up to a total ban. At the same time, other markets are opening up, and perhaps it would be more profitable for us to stop supplying the European market right now, to move into those markets that are opening up and establish ourselves there. There is no political motive here. I want that to be clear. But if they are going to close us off in a month or two anyway, then perhaps it is better for us to stop ourselves now.
Russia holds the world's largest natural gas reserves and is the world's second largest oil exporter. But Moscow lost most of its lucrative European market after the region sought to reduce its dependency on Russian energy due to the invasion of Ukraine. Putin said oil prices were rising due to the, quote, aggression against Iran and Western restrictions on Russian oil. He also blamed Europe's, quote, mistaken policies in the energy sector.
This is not a decision in this case. It is, as they say, thinking out loud. I will definitely instruct the government to work through this issue together with our companies.
With Europe turning away from Russian gas, Moscow has turned increasingly to China, the world's leading consumer and importer of energy.
And on Wall Street, US stocks ended the day higher as signs Iran may be open to talks helped ease investor nerves over the Middle East conflict as President Trump pledged to steady oil markets. Strong gains in tech led the way, with earnings and resilient US economic data giving markets an added boost.
U.S. stocks closed higher on Wednesday, with the Dow gaining 0.5%, the S&P 500 climbing more than 0.75%, and the Nasdaq adding 1.3%. A news report that Iran had signaled openness to talks and a pledge by President Donald Trump to steady oil markets calmed investor anxiety about the Middle East clash. But Adam Coons, chief investment officer at Winthrop Capital Management, said strong earnings and economic data are what's really powering stocks.
Aside from some smaller, and I don't mean to downplay certain things that are obviously big globally, but from a market standpoint, from what affects revenue, earnings, and that sort of thing, there's really nothing major hitting. To the contrast, I think we're getting data that's showing that the U.S. economy especially is continuing to be really resilient. Consumers resilient, jobs resilient. So I think that's going to continue to be the real story for markets.
Stocks on the move Wednesday included Moderna, which jumped 16% after the company agreed to pay up to $2.25 billion to settle a long-running legal fight over a COVID-19 vaccine patent. Shares of Broadcom, up more than 1% at the close, climbed further in extended trading after the chip designer forecast second quarter revenue above Wall Street estimates. And shares of identity security company Okta, down 1% at the close, recovered that loss as shares moved higher in extended trading. The stock gains came despite the company projecting single-digit growth for the first time since its 2017 IPO, as economic uncertainty weighs on enterprise technology spending. Okta's revenue for its previous fiscal quarter, however, rose 11%, beating analysts' estimates.
Let's get some other news now, and small businesses are still grappling with uncertainty even after the US Supreme Court struck down the tariffs that have cost them tens of thousands of dollars. While the decision opens the door for refunds, owners warn that timing and bureaucracy could make recovering that money far from straightforward.
Since the U.S. Supreme Court struck down President Donald Trump's tariffs, big corporations including FedEx, Costco, and L'Oreal have sued the government for refunds. And while the ruling is a win on paper for many, some small businesses are realizing that recouping a tariff refund won't be easy, if it happens at all.
The refund is important, but it's more important if it's done sooner because it allows us to stabilize pricing in the market.
Lee Siegel is founder and managing partner of VCR for Kids, which makes fixtures and learning products like toy boxes and cubbies. He says that while a tariff refund would help, the timing matters.
Like many companies that have imported, we have a tremendous amount of inventory that's burdened with these tariffs. And if there is in fact going to be a refund sooner rather than later, it allows us to adjust the cost basis and ultimately reduce the cost in the market.
Roughly 97% of U.S. importers are small businesses, according to the U.S. Chamber of Commerce. And of the $175 billion in tariffs paid to the U.S. government, small businesses paid about $55 billion, according to researchers at the University of Pennsylvania's Penn Wharton budget model. Small business advocates say the government has the infrastructure to refund tariffs easily and has done so before. But in a press conference after the Supreme Court's ruling, Trump didn't make it clear when or if there would be any refunds.
We'll end up being in court for the next 5 years.
For now, Siegel said he's holding off on litigation, citing a lack of clarity on the court process and no guarantee of the outcome.
Pretty much any business can operate under any set of rules and terms. It's really the inconsistency and the chaotic approach and the instability that really makes it very, very difficult.
Let's turn to the auto industry now, where Volvo Cars reported a 10% drop in sales volumes, citing US tariffs and other market headwinds. But there's a bright spot. Fully electric car sales jumped 18%, making up a quarter of the company's total sales, as demand for EVs continues to grow in Europe and beyond.
Volvo's sales volume dropped 10% in the 3 months through February. The automaker on Wednesday attributed this to US tariffs and other market headwinds, including a prolonged New Year holiday in China. But it said sales of fully electric cars jumped. The Swedish firm, majority owned by China's Geely Holding, reported almost 157,000 sales in the 3 months, with volumes of fully electric cars increasing 18% to account for a quarter of all sales. But sales in the whole electric car range, including hybrids, was slightly down. Volvo said earlier it would increase production of its new fully electric EX60 SUV. It's due to start being produced in Sweden during spring to meet strong demand in key markets like Germany. The group last month reported a 68% dive in fourth quarter profit. It forecast year-on-year growth in 2026, but braced for what it termed a persistently tough external environment. US President Donald Trump initially hiked import tariffs on cars from the EU to 27.5% from 2.5% during last year's push to reset Washington's global trade relations. That was later reduced to 15%, applied retroactively to August the 1st. Shares in Volvo Cars were roughly unchanged in morning trade. Year to date, shares are down 25%.
And finally, Apple's just dropped the MacBook Neo, a new lower-priced laptop starting at under $600. It's designed for students or anyone looking for their first Mac, sporting the same chip as the iPhone 16 Pro. Apple's giving the budget crowd a taste of its premium tech, just as rivals are feeling the squeeze.
Apple on Wednesday unveiled the MacBook Neo, a lower-priced laptop starting at $599. It's one of Apple's most aggressive entry points into the price-sensitive PC market in years, and it could help Apple broaden its reach among students and first-time buyers. The Neo will compete with Google-powered Chromebooks and lower-end Windows devices, where Microsoft's own efforts to shift to more battery life-friendly chips have failed to ignite a sales boom. The new, cheaper MacBook will be powered by the A18 Pro chip, the same processor that debuted in the iPhone 16 Pro models in 2024. In the midst of a global memory chip crunch, the Neo comes with only 8 gigabytes of unified memory, half of what's in the M4-based MacBook, and less than the 12 gigabytes in the iPhone 17 Pro.
A budget laptop for $600. You be the judge of that. That's your business news roundup for the day. Back to you guys.
Katie, thank you very much indeed. Great stuff. Thank you. Okay, after the break, NATO's Secretary General Mark Rutte says support for Ukraine will continue despite the escalating crisis in the Middle East as the alliance tries to balance two major security challenges at once. Do stay with us. Welcome back to Primetime. NATO Secretary General Mark Rutte said on Thursday that an incident involving an Iranian missile headed toward Turkey does not immediately warrant triggering the alliance's Article 5 mutual defense clause. Now, his comments come as Iran carries out retaliatory strikes on Israeli and US bases following a military operation targeting its nuclear capabilities. Rutte added that NATO supports the United States in its strikes against Iran, saying the country had been close to becoming a threat to Europe as well.
Article 5, I think, is not in order here. Nobody's talking about Article 5. And the most important thing is that our adversaries have seen yesterday that NATO is so strong and so vigilant, and even more vigilant, if possible, since Saturday because of the situation, of course, in the Middle East. So they see and know and sense that our military are on this. We support the president in taking out that capability, as the Americans were able to do, and they're working on that, as we know. But of course, there are always downsides in the sense that you have to be sure that you defend every inch of NATO territory, as we are.
Well, as the Middle East crisis deepens, NATO insists its support for Ukraine will not weaken. Secretary-General Mark Rutte saying that the alliance can manage both challenges at once, continuing assistance to Kyiv while responding to rising tensions with Iran. Well, joining us now is Daniela Mello, political scientist, to discuss what this balancing act means for NATO and European security. Daniela, thank you very much indeed for joining us on Primetime. It's great to have you here. In terms of practical support then, can NATO realistically deal with Ukraine whilst also trying to respond to this crisis in the Middle East?
Hello, and thank you for having me. Yes, NATO is definitely stuck between the rock and the hard place because on one hand, NATO is created and based on the premise that international order should be withheld. And as we know, a number of NATO members have taken different positions on whether or not they should support the Americans in this war effort or not, and to what extent. And that alone has been an interesting discussion to listen to amongst the Europeans. However, coming back to your question specifically, it's unclear. It's unclear that NATO can actually withstand both of these fronts if pulled into both. Now, Mark Rutte's words were careful, and Turkey, of course, is going to be careful as well not to be activating Article 5 and pulling all of NATO into a conflict that is already widening, I would say quicker than most expected. NATO has no interest in being pulled into this war. The Americans, and certainly not by the Turks. At the same time, it is clear that the Americans are the #1 suppliers of, for instance, munitions to the war in Ukraine. So even if I raised this issue because this is an important issue for Ukraine in particular. Ukraine gets its munitions now from the Americans. The Europeans are the ones buying it. But if this conflict actually draws down the stockpiles that the United States has at its disposal, it's going to be far less willing to supply them, even if it's selling them, but to supply them to the Ukrainians. And this, of course, could weaken the position of the Ukrainians in the war against Russia, and of the Europeans, of course, who see Ukraine as a bellwether for its own security concerns regarding Russia. If I may add one other dimension here, is that Russia could come out of this, in the short term at least, being strengthened economically if the oil prices continue to rise. And if China needs to turn from a domestic market on energy that is now being affected by war, controlled by the United States in the case of Venezuela, and gets that supply from a place like Russia. So we have a situation here in which the Europeans, whether through NATO or as NATO members, but certainly as allies of Ukraine, understand that this actually places Ukraine in a weaker position potentially, and that's something obviously they want to avoid at all costs. So it is a difficult situation for the Europeans to manage. Security is still quite dependent on the American umbrella. They are not in a position yet to assure their own security. So they cannot position themselves against the Americans, but they cannot position themselves excessively on the side of the Americans because their own publics will punish them for that too.
Yeah, very complicated, strategically very complicated, as you say, from a supply chain point of view as well. One of the things we're hearing more and more about in recent days is the advanced nature of Ukraine's drone technology, the skills and tech that they've developed, I guess, as a necessary response to the pressure that they've been put under militarily by Russia. How important is that expertise, the Ukrainian expertise in drone technology, going to be for NATO in the future, do you think?
Quite important. I mean, we are breaking ground in terms of military technology, or even the basic way in which war is fought in the 21st century in Ukraine. And the Ukrainians have been at the forefront of some of this development. And by the way, so have been the Iranians, being able to inflict maximum casualties or hit important targets with very low cost type of drones that are also very effective, but that can really overwhelm the defensive capacities of the enemy. So we're likely to see, I mean, the Ukrainians have certainly campaigned for their inclusion in the European Union and in NATO using these types of arguments, saying that, listen, nobody is more advanced in terms of security right now, in terms of military strategy than we are. Of course, that's because we were forced to into this conflict, but the Europeans and NATO in particular, but the European Union can really benefit Ukraine's know-how at this point. And I mean, there's also rumors now that the Ukrainians maybe want to support the American effort, if need be, with their own drones and with their own skills at this moment. That would be sort of an interesting dynamic. But of course, the Ukrainians themselves have to position themselves in the most advantageous possible position, because they are a country being attacked by a superpower, and they need to maintain their alliances in place as well at this critical juncture.
Daniela, Mark Rutte says that NATO ammunition production has increased sixfold. Is that something that's going to help the alliance get better prepared for prolonged conflicts, do you think?
Without a doubt. However, that doesn't say much right now, because munition production wasn't that high to begin with. So sixfold increases, Europeans know they are still far from the targets that they need to hit if they're going to continue to support Ukraine. And they certainly know they are not yet in a position to be able to simply accept that the Americans or divest from American ammunitions, weapons, systems, intelligence as well, of course. So there's still a long road to go for NATO to be able to, well, for the Europeans within the European Union, certainly, to be able to claim to have some strategic independence, autonomy, when it comes to their stockpiles, their munitions, their production of intelligence. I could go on.
And how important do you think the NATO-Ukraine Cooperation Center in Poland is for adapting new military doctrines?
Do you mean that in terms of military strategy, or?
Yes. How will it change? How will it set a new paradigm almost for the way that military thinking, military strategy plays out?
Well, Poland is very interested, of course, in its own security vis-a-vis the Russians, given their history, and has been an advocate for Ukraine being more involved in European security as well. The problem, of course, is that the conflict has basically frozen, and a frozen conflict with pretty much the understanding that the Ukrainians being a part of NATO is probably not going to happen anytime soon. But the Ukrainians being part of the European Union and sharing intelligence and sharing know-how and sharing technology with the Europeans can, of course, indirectly benefit NATO itself.
And do you think we've been hearing an awful lot from some analysts that suggesting that in some way that the Middle East crisis is shifting emphasis, taking attention unhelpfully away from Ukraine? What's your perspective on that? Is it becoming almost unmanageable to contain, to manage the two crises at the same time?
From the American perspective, it's very clear that President Trump is less interested in Ukraine as the weeks go by and more focused in other issues, other conflicts, and other areas of the world that he considers more important for American national security and for his own legacy. We do have a president who's also concerned with what legacy. I mean, he has said it himself quite bluntly. What legacy he's going to leave in the international order, and he wants that legacy to be one that leaves the United States in the strongest possible position, controlling. Not only the energy market, which clearly is one of the goals of the administration as well, but significantly weakening the enemies of the United States, the traditional enemies of the United States. And Iran, from the point of view of the United States, is quite important because it's a long-time enemy of the United States, at least since 1979 and the revolution. It's a state sponsor of terrorism in the region. And striking Iran strategically right now from the point of view of the United States can bring many more benefits to this administration than continued support in Ukraine. And here's what I mean by that. In striking Iran, if the United States is successful, it can achieve two more strategic goals, one of which is actually drawing back from the region. Like the United States has tried over many administrations to diminish its role and its presence in the Middle East and in Middle Eastern conflicts, but it knows it cannot do so. It keeps pulled back. Well, this administration has reasoned that if we can create a superpower, it basically becomes a hegemonic power within the region that actually serves the interests of the United States because Israel is an ally. The region can then be pacified through other diplomatic means, and the enemy of both Israel and the United States ceases to be so, could even become an ally. The second part of that is that by striking Iran, I mean, China gets more than 13% of its oil from Iran. China has already been hit in terms of its access to energy with the strikes in Venezuela and the removal of Maduro and the seizing of any oil exports going to China. So the United States, by striking Iran, could also strike a blow here against China in the very short and immediate term as it prepares for the negotiations that President Trump, at least as of now, is going to be conducting in China a month from now.
Very, very interesting stuff. Daniela, thank you so much for joining us. We really appreciate your analysis. Thank you. After the break, we'll turn to the Pakistan-Afghanistan border, where heavy shelling and airstrikes are continuing for an 8th day, forcing thousands of civilians from their home as the conflict intensifies. Stay with us. A warm welcome back to Primetime wherever you're watching. Heavy fighting is continuing along the frontier between Pakistan and Afghanistan. Shelling and airstrikes have forced thousands of civilians from their homes as the conflict enters its 8th day.
Heavy shelling and explosions have continued along the Pakistan-Afghanistan border. Residents on both sides report intense cross-border fire, with clashes often starting in the evening hours. Afghan officials say around 1,500 families have been displaced, with many now sheltering in temporary camps near the border in eastern Afghanistan.
On Thursday night, after the Taraweeh prayer, this misery began. Fighting started in Torkham. People were displaced. Some came here to the Lalpur camp, and others went to their relatives' homes. Heavy fighting is ongoing in Torkham and was still continuing until the evening.
Afghanistan's defense ministry says Taliban forces shot down a Pakistani drone and captured 7 border posts during the fighting. It also says more than 100 civilians have been killed and over 100 wounded since the clashes began. The United Nations says casualty figures remain difficult to verify because humanitarian access to the affected areas is limited.
Afghanistan is facing one of the largest returnee displacement crises globally, with more than 5 million returnees recorded over the last 2 years, including 2.6 million last year alone. Any additional conflict-driven displacement or sudden large-scale returns would place severe strain on local services, border infrastructure, and host communities, further eroding the already limited capacity.
On the Pakistani side, hospitals in northwestern regions report treating residents injured by shelling. Officials say Pakistani airstrikes have targeted at least 46 locations across Afghanistan over the past week. Local communities say homes near the frontier have been hit, forcing families to seek shelter away from the border while security forces continue operations.
Well, with these clashes entering their 8th day, concerns are being raised about a wider humanitarian and security crisis along the frontier. Joining us now is Andy Mioch to discuss the implications of this escalating conflict. Andy, good to see you in the studio. I mean, this is a serious escalation, isn't it, on this frontier?
Well, Guy, I gotta say that this conflict has taken the backseat to the, of course, Iran conflict with U.S. and Israel, which has escalated not only today but in recent days. However, this conflict is still the worst fighting between Pakistan and Afghanistan since the Qatari-mediated ceasefire in October, with many saying that this is the worst direct confrontation even in years. Now, all of this needs to be prefaced by saying that all the figures and claims presented by both sides are very hard, nearly impossible to verify. Now, with that being said, these latest clashes saw Pakistani airstrikes on major Afghan cities last week. We saw that Afghan Taliban forces have attacked Pakistan's military posts and so on. There's been intermittent cross-border attacks. Now, the Taliban said that their operation was in response to earlier Pakistani airstrikes, and then Islamabad says that those earlier airstrikes were in response to Afghanistan hiding and providing refuge to militants in its own territory who attack Pakistan. It's a very, very murky situation here. Not long after this latest round of clashes started on Friday, Pakistan's defense minister said that the two sides are at a, quote, open war. Both countries claim they inflicted heavy losses on the other side without providing any evidence. According to the government in Islamabad, as of yesterday, at least 481 Taliban fighters have been killed and more than 200 Taliban checkpoints have been destroyed. Now, on the other side, the Taliban, as reported by Afghanistan International, have said its forces have captured 10 Pakistani posts in recent days, killing more than 150 Pakistani soldiers. Now, the only numbers that we have that are at least somewhat unbiased are the ones from the United Nations Assistance Mission in Afghanistan, which has said that at least 42 civilians have been killed in Afghanistan and 104 wounded in indirect fire in cross-border clashes. And that's only for the time period between February 26th and March 2nd.
Andy, I think with any conflict, particularly one that seems to keep going on, keep stopping and starting again, people want to know why. What's driving it? Obviously, we have the kind of the back and forth, an action and then a reciprocal action. But underneath all that, what's really driving this conflict?
Well, I've touched upon it a bit earlier, but basically Islamabad says that it's carrying out airstrikes which have at times directly hit Taliban government targets and that they are aimed at ending Afghan support for militants carrying out attacks on targets in Pakistan. The Afghan Taliban, meanwhile, have said that they do not aid any militant groups. A senior Pakistani security official has told Reuters that the airstrikes would continue until Afghanistan took concrete steps to ensure that militants are not using Afghanistan's territory to attack Pakistan, and that if such steps are not taken, Pakistan could target the Taliban's top leadership. Then we have a political advisor to Pakistan's Prime Minister Shahbaz Sharif, who told GOTV that Pakistan had achieved most targets, but that the operations are continuing as Pakistan wants, quote, verifiable evidence that Afghan soil would not be used for further attacks.
And Andy, of course, the worst thing about any conflict is the people that are affected. In terms of the humanitarian side of this, give us a sense of the impact so far.
Well, we've got some data from the International Organization for Migration. They've said in a statement that this confrontation along the Durand Line, some 2,600 kilometers separating these two countries, that these clashes have already resulted in the displacement of nearly 66,000 people in eastern and southeastern Afghanistan. This UN body also reminded that Afghanistan is already facing one of the largest returnee-related displacement crises globally, with more than 5 million returnees recorded over the past 2 years, including 2.6 million people in 2025 alone. Now, just for some context, these returnees, those are Afghan refugees who found refuge in Pakistan and Iran and in other places. And ever since the Taliban took back power in Afghanistan in 2021, these neighboring countries have started sending Afghans back to Afghanistan. Now, IOM has warned that any additional conflict-driven displacement or any sudden large influx of returnees would, quote, place severe strain on local services, border infrastructure, and host communities, further eroding the already limited response capacity. Now, the World Food Program, meanwhile, said that residents of more than 46 districts across Afghanistan are already facing severe food insecurity, and that was before this fighting broke out. They said on Tuesday that they were forced to temporarily suspend all their operations when it comes to emergency social protection, school feeding, and other activities. They added that approximately 160,000 people have been impacted by this suspension of the World Food Program emergency food distributions.
Yeah, very serious situation indeed. Andy, thank you very much indeed. Okay, after the break, Turkey prepares contingency plans for a possible refugee influx from Iran, while neighbouring Azerbaijan becomes a key evacuation route as diplomats and civilians across the Astara border. Do stay with us. Turkey has activated contingency plans to manage a possible refugee wave fleeing the conflict in Iran. Well, the Interior Minister Mustafa Yefsi announced a three-tier strategy that includes establishing buffer zones along the border and setting up tent camps, while stressing that border crossings remain calm for now. The minister confirmed Turkey is ready to host up to 90,000 people in the event of a sudden influx. Well, tensions in Iran have triggered a wave of evacuations through Azerbaijan's Astara border. Diplomats and civilians from over 45 countries, including Italy, Spain and Azerbaijan, are using the crossing to leave the country safely. The checkpoint has become a crucial route amid regional instability. Our very own Chimnaz Shalar has more details now in this report.
Italy's embassy in Iran is evacuating a 45-member staff through the Astara state border checkpoint here in southern Azerbaijan. 8 citizens of Tajikistan, 4 from China and 1 from the Vatican have also crossed through the Astara. Overall, more than 1,300 people have now been evacuated from Iran through this crossing following the US and Israel military operations on February 28. The evacuees represent 45 different countries, including 259 Azerbaijan citizens. Here in Astara, the checkpoint has turned into a key route for people leaving Iran.
We just have factory in Iran, and now for America and Israel, they are make fair. So because of this, so we should going back to our country. Azerbaijan, I think, is a beautiful country. We've been here, and now so nice people. Everything is good. Thank you, country. Without your country, without your help, and we can't go back to our country.
Since last night alone, more than 30 people have crossed the border, including citizens of Azerbaijan, Spain, and Russia. Astara is now being used not only by civilians but also by diplomatic missions. Most recently, ambassadors and embassy staff from Croatia, Brazil, and Spain also left Iran through this crossing. Around 30 people from these embassies entered Azerbaijan safely. I'm Chimnaz Shahlar with Nijat Kasımov reporting from Astara for A News.
Well, as tensions around Iran continue to rise, countries across the region are preparing for possible spillover effects, including the risk of new refugee flows and disruptions to regional stability. Well, Turkey says it has activated contingency plans in case of large numbers of people attempting to flee the conflict, while neighbouring Azerbaijan is already facilitating evacuations through the Astara border crossing. Well, joining us now is Mehmet Erçu, who is the chairman of the London Energy Club and a former Turkish diplomat, speaking to us from London. Mehmet, thank you very much for joining us. Apologies for the pronunciation of your surname. I hope I didn't get it too wrong. Is Turkey...
You did it very well.
Thank you very much. Is Turkey, do you think, ready for this refugee influx from Iran? We don't know the numbers yet, but are they prepared?
Well, I mean, Turkey is one of the countries best prepared for receiving any refugees, because you may remember the Syrian crisis when almost 4 million refugees entered Turkey, and still Turkey is struggling to cope with this challenge. This is the highest number of refugees in the world hosted, and therefore Turkey is well prepared. But Turkey is prepared for the worst case scenario. If the war deepens and if there will be some sort of instability growing internally within Iran, of course, people will look for safe havens. And Turkey and Azerbaijan are probably the only safe havens to which people will try to look for safety and security. Therefore, Turkey doesn't want more refugees to come, but if it comes to that humanitarian-wise, it will be inevitable. And Turkey is creating, as you said, a buffer zone and probably some camps where they can be held until the danger is over. And not only Turkey, but also European Union countries are very much worried about it.
Yes.
That's the reason why a couple of days ago, EU President, European Commission President Ursula, called for a minister, and they discussed this issue. If this happens, how should we respond collectively? But this is a huge challenge, and there are humanitarian, of course, concerns. You want to embrace all these people fleeing from danger, but on the other hand, it brings huge risks and cost to accepting country.
Yes.
And Turkey has seen the result of what happened since 2015 when it opened its borders to the Syrians. It created social problems and some even racism in certain places, and crime increase, economic difficulties, and not so much assistance coming from the rest of the world. And therefore, our hope is that the crisis will be contained and the war will come to an end, and there will be no need for that. However, don't forget that if you look at the ethnic composition of Iran, only 60% are Persians, and the remaining 40 are largely Azeri origin,
yes,
Kurds, Arabs, Turkmens, and Baluchis. And if it leads to ethnic nationalism of Persians in the country, then there will be nationalism on the other minorities as well. Then the country will be somehow split. This is probably what Israel want, because they don't want to have a united, strong Iran, probably. And some of the people, therefore, will be looking for other destinations, and Turkey, Azerbaijan. Then some of them are moving to perhaps Oman. And there is no other safe place in the Gulf. It's being bombarded, as you know, Saudi Arabia, Bahrain, even Dubai and Iraq. And so we should see the problem as, from Syria, all the way from the East Mediterranean, going to Pakistani border. As you mentioned also in the previous reporting, the war is going on between Afghanistan and Pakistan. Nobody pays attention to that. Everybody's focusing on the Strait of Hormuz, what's happening in Iran, the bombardments by Israel in the US. But Afghanistan-Pakistan border is no less important, although it's not geopolitically and oil flows wise so important or prominent. That's the reason why we don't talk much about it. Therefore, I suggest that Azerbaijan, Turkey, Georgia, Armenia, and the European Union countries should start talking to each other at an early stage, how to contain, how to manage a potential massive flow of people coming to their gates, because you may not be able to turn them down. If it's also there's also pressure from the Iranian forces towards them. There will be perhaps mass repression, killings, and we should be prepared for any eventualities rather than waiting what will happen if it happens.
Yes, indeed. And I guess these are very complex preparations, aren't they? Because one thing is to try and estimate the total number of people and check that you've got the provisions and the processes to account for that. But of course, this war is unfolding in such an erratic way that trying to understand the pace, the cadence, if you like, of that flow is very difficult. It's very hard for officials to know when they will start to come and in what number.
Well, I mean, just we can imagine or speculate. If you have a population of 90 million and 40% of that are ethnically vulnerable people, and they will be affected, and then even 10% of 90 million will decide to move to safer places. That makes about 9 million people. Yeah. This is not an insignificant number. No country around Iran could accommodate that, neither Azerbaijan nor Turkey, nor on the other side, Pakistan, which is not in friendly terms with Iran. And therefore, each country will try to keep their borders tight. And however, it comes to a point when humanitarian concerns, especially for children, women, and elderly, you have to open the border, but keep them. Perhaps the mistake Turkey made, perhaps on the case of Syrians, and Turkey opened the border altogether, and they let all the Syrians spread around the country. Now they are an integral part of the country, which changed the demographic and social fabric in a significant way. Therefore, you need to contain them in buffer zones and look after them with international assistance, of course. And then when the crisis is over, you should let them go back to their own home.
Mr. Uçi, it's been very great to have you on the show. We've really enjoyed your analysis. Thank you very much indeed for joining us on Primetime.
My pleasure. My pleasure.
Okay, after the break, we'll check in with our correspondents all around the region for the very latest in what's happening in their areas. Do stay with us. Welcome back to Primetime. Now, competition is heating up at the Ski Mountaineering European Championship in Azerbaijan's Shardag. After an intense sprint race yesterday, athletes are now taking on the fast-paced mixed relay event. Here's the very latest from our correspondent Narticek Yahangurli, who is reporting on the ground.
Today, we woke up to unexpectedly sunny weather as the Ski Mountaineering European Championship enters its second day in Caucasian winter resort, Shardag. Despite the sunshine, the temperature remains well below zero. But the atmosphere here is thrilling because today, skiers are competing in the mixed relay event. Unlike yesterday, today's discipline is all about teamwork. In the mixed relay, male and female athletes race together as one team. It's a fast-paced event where coordination is key. Now, this is very interesting. After finishing a lap, an athlete tags their teammate in the exchange zone like this, and the teammate immediately begins their lap. The race combines uphill climbing on skis, quick transitions and high-speed downhill skiing in a relay format. Each lap usually includes several technical sections, and because of that, the lead can change frequently. Now, let's quickly take a look at yesterday's sprint event results. As expected, freshly returned from Italy, the Olympic champions proved they are still determined to stay on the podium. In the men's sprint race, Olympic silver medalist Nikita Filippov, competing as an international athlete, finished first and claimed the gold medal. In the women's sprint race, Switzerland's Olympic gold medalist Marianne Faton held on to the first place and also secured gold. Other athletes who reached the podium represented Switzerland, Spain, Italy and Germany. We still have 3 more exciting days ahead, so stay with us for the latest updates from the European Championship. Narchik Jahangirli, Natik Mehmedov, Eves Hajiev, A News.
Back to the Middle East now, and the Israeli military has urged residents of Beirut's southern suburb of Dahir to evacuate ahead of planned strikes. Meanwhile, missile exchanges continue, with the conflict increasingly affecting both the region and the global economy.
The IDF issues an urgent warning to residents of Beirut's southern suburbs, a Hezbollah stronghold known as the Dahiyya, ahead of planned strikes against the group. The unprecedented evacuation order marks the first time that the Israeli military has called on wide exports of the Lebanese capital to evacuate it. Previous evacuation warnings in Beirut have been for specific buildings. The Palestinian Authority's Civil Defense Agency said it has responded to 12 cases of Iranian missiles through Agno impact since Saturday, out of a total of 70 reported cases. The spiraling conflict has also endangered millions of lives across the Middle East and left tens of thousands of foreign citizens stranded and at risk of being caught in the violence in the region. Its effects are also felt globally on the economy, having disrupted one of the world's most important energy corridors, as well as a key hub of the aviation and tourist sectors. The first repatriation flights will take place in the coming hours. More than 100,000 Israelis are stranded outside the country, waiting to return home. Israel has received several waves of missiles in the past few hours, with no casualties reported.
To Iran now. Tensions remain high in Iran as the war enters its 6th day. Pro-government rallies are underway in Tehran, while officials warn of escalating attacks. Our correspondent Toraz Shirililo brings us more from Tehran.
I have arrived to a square in downtown Tehran, where a pro-government rally is underway in condemnation of Israel-US war against Iran. 2 days ago, a government building behind me was attacked, and A News was granted access to film it and the nearby residential units and offices, which were seriously damaged. Today is the 6th day of the war, and conflicting parties have intensified the exchange of attacks, both verbally and in action. Iran's security chief Ali Larijani said that 500 American troops were killed as a result of Iran's armed forces fire. He said that, unlike the United States, the Islamic Republic is prepared to find a prolonged war. Amid an escalation in the fighting, the state-owned Martyrs Foundation announced that number of civilian casualties has passed 1,000. It said 200 of the Iranians killed were the girl students targeted when their school was bombed last Saturday in south of the country. Meantime, as preparations are underway for burial of Supreme Leader Ayatollah Sayyid Ali Khamenei, who was killed on the first day of war, the Provisional Leadership Council has been meeting to regulate the voting procedures. President Masoud Pezeshkian, who is one of the 3 members of the Interim Council, in a message to leaders of the regional countries hosting US bases, said that Tehran respects their sovereignty. He added that Iran was left with no option but to retaliate in self-defense after it was attacked from these bases. Also, Foreign Minister Abbas Araghchi has been in telephone contacts with his counterparts in the neighboring countries and foreign ministers of France and Russia. In a post on X, he promised bitter revenge for sinking Iran's Navy ship Dena by a U.S. submarine. He said, "Mark my words, the U.S. will come to bitterly regret the precedent it has set." Tura Shiralilu, reporting for A News from Engelab Square in downtown Tehran.
To Central Asia now, Kazakhstan's president has thanked Saudi Arabia for helping evacuate Kazakh citizens from the Middle East amid rising regional tensions. President Kassym-Jomart Tokayev discussed the situation in a phone call with Crown Prince Mohammed bin Salman. Our correspondent in Almaty has more.
Kazakh President Kassym-Jomart Tokayev has thanked Saudi Arabia's Crown Prince Mohammed bin Salman for assisting in the evacuation of Kazakh citizens from the Middle East. The phone call took place amid rising tensions in the region. During the conversation, both sides noted that the escalation of conflict poses a threat not only to regional stability but also to global security. They also expressed concern that attacks are taking place on the territory of countries that are not directly involved in the confrontation. At the same time, Kazakhstan continues to bring its citizens home. According to the Civil Aviation Committee, more than 1,000 Kazakh nationals returned from the Middle East. The evacuation operation is still ongoing. And against the backdrop of growing regional tensions, the authorities in Kazakhstan have also stepped up security measures inside the country. President Tokayev instructed the government, security agencies, national companies and regional authorities to strengthen the protection of critical infrastructure. This includes energy and transport systems, as well as airports and seaports. The coordination of these measures has been assigned to the Secretary of the Security Council. Meanwhile, the government is assessing possible economic implications of the conflict. Deputy Prime Minister and Minister of National Economy Serik Zhumangarin said Kazakhstan's supply routes have already been adapted to external challenges, including those that emerged after the war between Russia and Ukraine. He said routes through the Persian Gulf have rarely been used by Kazakhstan, including the Iranian port of Bandar Abbas, which has never been a key export route due to complex infrastructure and long transit through several countries. The minister added that the main economic risk is potential volatility of the national currency, the tenge, amid instability in global oil prices. Fariza Kalimursina, Almaty, A News.
Well, that is all for Prime Time. Please do join us again tomorrow night for plenty more news and analysis. And from all of us here at A News, thanks for watching.